Hello there and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we are taking a look at the world of retro supercars. We begin with the 1981 BMW M1, 277 horsepower, 243 foot-pound torque, 2,866 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today and the least torquey car here today. Now, interestingly enough, putting together this episode was actually a little bit difficult because I've used quite a lot of retro supercars already. For example, the Legends of Speed episode had a lot of the most famous supercars, so you'll see a few obscure cars in today's episode, this BMW M1 being one of them. I wouldn't really count this as a supercar per se because I don't think it's powerful enough or quick enough or whatever, but yeah, as I said, a little bit of a struggle to put this episode together. And to be fair, this car was designed to be the first true road-going, you can use it every single day supercar. You know, the Lamborghinis at the time had heavy clutches and steering and you couldn't see out of them. BMW M1 was designed to be a little bit more usable. As far as it goes to drive, well, it's very usable indeed when it comes to the game. It's a very easy car to drive, this one. It's pretty darn great. It's a huge amount of fun as well. It's a very neutral driving car. You can get a hang of it very, very quickly. It doesn't really tend towards understeer or oversteer. It's just nice and balanced. It's a very, as I said, easy car to drive. If you want something that isn't really going to give you too many troubles, that you can probably build up with a certain amount of confidence, the BMW M1 might be a pretty darn good choice. Next up, we've got the 1994 Ferrari F355 Berlinetta. 375 horsepower, 268 foot-pound torque, 3,196 pounds of weight. The F355 might actually be my favourite of these sort of mid-engined Ferraris. You know, obviously I like mid-engined Ferraris. I quite like the 430, the 360 I like. But the 355, it sort of just has that definitive Ferrari shape for me. I love the way it looks. I love the sound. The sound is orgasmic in this thing. It is incredible. And yeah, maybe it is true what they say about Ferraris, you know, they don't make them like they used to, and the 355 was certainly something special, and a car which I'd certainly get more excited to see than, say, a 458 or a 488. Then again, with the amount of replicas of this thing, how do you know you're even looking at a real one? Maybe this isn't a real one, maybe it's an MR2, maybe Toyota is actually in the game. Anyways, enough memeing. This car's excellent. There's no real other way to say that. It is an absolutely exquisite driving car. I love driving this thing. And when I was driving it, I was only getting quicker and quicker and quicker and building more confidence in it. It's amazing how much speed you can actually take through the corners in this thing. It's amazing how quick it actually is. You know, 375 horsepower isn't really a lot for a modern day sports car or supercar. But in this, it really is quite quick. It's pretty darn incredible. Next up, we have the 1995 Ferrari F50, 513 horsepower, 347 foot-pound torque, 2,712 pounds of weight. This is the lightest car here today, which is pretty interesting because it's actually got the most amount of cylinders of any car here today, apart from one that you'll see much later on. It, of course, has a 12-cylinder. This was essentially designed to be an F1 car for the road. It has a very heavily modified version of the engine Ferrari was using in the Formula 1 car of the time. Didn't quite pan out the way they expected it to. The Ferrari F50 is often considered to be one of the weaker Ferraris, but for me, it is actually one of my favourites. It's right up there, as in top 3 of my favourite Ferraris. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. I love the way this thing looks. I love the sound of it. And also, on top of that, I love the way it handles. This car, for me, is pretty much perfect. This is how I want all cars to handle. It's not hugely quick in a straight line, but my god, the handling, it is incredible. It's just got grip for days. It's so grippy. You can pretty much show it any corner at any speed, you know, within reason, and it will take it without any incidents at all. It's a fantastic car. I highly recommend you go out and drive it. Next up, we have the 2002 Lotus Esprit V8, 350 horsepower, 295 foot-pound torque, 2,851 pounds of weight. Yes, we have the mighty Esprit with possibly the largest pop-up headlights I've ever seen. This thing looks incredibly stupid with the pop-ups up. Yeah, they're incredibly huge. Of course, it's the Lotus Esprit, one of the longest running sports cars of all time. It ran from the 70s all the way up until 2004, I believe, and it probably would have kept going longer than that if we hadn't banned pop-up headlights because of pedestrian safety, and also the nose would have probably need to be lifted. Yeah, the Esprit is a name which people are hoping would come back. I guess the Evora is sort of the modern day equivalent of the Esprit, but it's not quite the same because that's obviously a 2+2 and all the rest of it. As far as the Esprit goes to drive, it is pretty good. I have a few issues with it. The tracks on the tyres are very weird, like the front tyres are way smaller than the rear tyres. And I don't know if that's what's to blame for the fact this car feels a little bit disconnected. The front end darts in quite nicely, but the rear end just wants to sort of slide around and act like a muscle car with a V8 engine. Very strange. I find it hard to recommend over anything else here today, but it's not a bad car to drive. It's just a little bit of an odd one. Next up, we have the 2003 Porsche Carrera GT, 605 horsepower, 455 foot-pound torque, 3,258 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest car here today. Of course, the mighty Carrera GT, famous for that glorious V10 engine. This is easily the best sounding car here today. I mean, that Ferrari F355 might be up there, but no, the Carrera GT has the awesome howl of the V10. It is awesome. I'm not a huge fan of the Carrera GT. I love the engine in this car, don't get me wrong, but I think looks-wise it's a little bit too boxstery, and it just doesn't really interest me much as a car. I'm not really a huge Porsche enthusiast, but as far as it goes to drive, it's sensitive is the best way to describe it. The V10 is very reactive. It's in the Lexus LFA, that car's known for, you know, gaining revs and so on and so forth really quickly. This does that, and as a result, the body sort of can't take it at times. If you sort of mash the throttle, the car will just try and kill you. Basically, it is always trying to kill you, the Carrera GT, so you do need to watch out for that. It tried to through that last corner, as you can see there. Yeah, a little bit unrestrained, but not a terrible car, but you do certainly need to watch your back with it. Next up, 2004 Saleen S7, 575 horsepower, 570 foot-pound torque, 2,756 pounds of weight. An often overlooked supercar as far as history is concerned. No one really talks about the Saleen S7 all that much, which is pretty strange when you consider this car is actually bloody incredible. In real life, it can do 230 miles per hour. It has 575 horsepower. It's almost as quick as a McLaren F1 with less horsepower than an F1. I mean, it looks like an F1. Yeah, this thing is incredible, and later on in life they put twin turbos on it, and I believe it could do about 250 miles an hour with them on. It's insane. It's also insane no one really speaks about it. It's, I guess, one of America's only proper supercars. Anyways, as far as this goes to drive, it is fantastic. I love driving the Saleen S7. It is so good. It does feel a little bit heavy, which is weird because it's the second lightest car here today, but if you can get over that, it handles incredibly. The speed is ridiculous. This thing has super long gears like the McLaren F1, but it is phenomenally quick in a straight line. Please drive the Saleen S7. You will love it, I assure you. Next up, the 2007 Ferrari F450 Scuderia, 503 horsepower, 346 foot-pound torque, 2,975 pounds of weight. The 430 Scuderia, a car I actually quite like a lot. I really like the way this thing looks with the stripes on it, the more aggressive front end over the standard 430. I guess this is probably the last V8 Ferrari mid-engine supercar I liked. I'm not a huge fan of the 458 Italia, and by extension, not a greater fan of the 488 GTB. I think it's better than the 458, but I'm still not a huge fan of that. This, though, I really like. The 430 Scuderia. I would never own one because they had no carpets or aircon or anything like that, and I'm a man who's all about the comfort. But yeah, it is an incredible car, none of the less. As far as it goes to drive, it's incredibly quick. I've driven this a few times in Forza. It's been around most seasons of Top Gear laps. I don't really remember too much about the way it drives though, but I will say in this game, it's incredibly quick. Just in terms of lap times, it is insane. I never remember it being quite as quick as it is in this game. Of course, you'll have to wait until the end to see the lap time of this thing, but my god, it's actually pretty darn phenomenal in this game. And finally today, we have the 2009 Pagani Zonda 678 horsepower, 575 foot-pound torque, 2,858 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today. It is also the most torquey, and it's the car which is going to get the most coins because people are going to complain about the way I pronounce Cinque. I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't care if it isn't because I don't speak about this car a whole lot, which is a bit of a shame. I love the Pagani Zonda. I much prefer it to the Huayra not much of a fan of that car, although the BC is fantastic. But let's cut straight to the chase. The Zonda Cinque, any Forza game it's in, it's been an incredible car. In this game, it's excellent handling, very, very quick. There's, not too much difference between this car and how it was in Forza 6 and Forza 5, where it was an incredibly quick car. It is orgasmic to drive. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's phenomenal. We've had a lot of phenomenal cars here today. The Zonda's the one that probably sort of the most people will like. I know I can be a bit controversial in my opinions in the way cars drive, but most people can probably agree the Zonda is a phenomenal car to drive. There's a lot of cars that you should have driven today, but which one has topped the leaderboard? Well, it's unsurprising. It's the Pagani Zonda Cinque. It goes in 6th place with a 111.576. It goes in between a Bugatti Veyron Supersport and a Hennessy Venom GT. It is about 2 seconds off of the Huayra BC, so Pagani finally got their act together with that one. However, we do have some surprises as we move down the board. Especially in 16th place, we find the Saleen S7 with a 114.568. It's quicker than an ACR Viper, McLaren 650S, EB110, Aventador. The S7 is hilariously quick around this track, way quicker than it's ever been in previous series. In 23rd place, we find the Porsche Carrera GT with 115.370, which is actually a decent enough time. It goes between a McLaren F1 and a modern-day Audi R8. Nothing hugely surprising on that regard. In 29th place, we find the Ferrari 430 Scuderia, another surprising goal, 116.156, beats out the 458 Italia. I was not expecting it to do that. I don't know how it did that, but yeah, it beat the Italia, which is, I think, another first for Top Gear laps. In 35th place, we find the Ferrari F50 with 116.773, beats out the XJ220 RS200. Phenomenal car to drive, the F50. Probably my favourite of every car that I drove today. Incredible. Moving down the board some more, in 70th place, we find the Lotus Esprit V8s with 121.125, which is actually pretty darn good. Beats out a Chevrolet Corvette Z06 and beats out the Ferrari F355 Berlinetta, which got a 121.329. It is slightly quicker than a 612 Scaglietti, both of them quicker than the Evora S, which is interesting, especially in the case of the Esprit. Old is better than new in that regard. Moving down, for the final time today, the slowest car in 111th place was the BMW M1 with a 125.208. Yeah, we weren't expecting phenomenal times out of that car. It goes in between an RX-7 and a Local Motors Rally Fighter Fast and Furious edition. It's quicker than an ML63. It's about, in Preza Evo territory on the board, as I like to call it. Some pretty good results today. Honestly, a lot of excellent driving cars. I don't think I disliked any car here today. The Esprit's a bit weird, and the Carrera GT is a little bit too sensitive for my books, but everything else here today, a phenomenal car and one I highly suggest you look at. Anyways, speaking of looking at stuff, next week we're going to take a look at modern supercars, so join us for that. Until then, thanks for watching, and farewell.